From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Folks, good morning. Happy Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's Practitioner Brief. I hope you had a great weekend. I know I did, but we had a lot of things going on. So before we get started on today's podcast, just a few housekeeping stuff here, folks. First of all, subscribe now if you can. All right, please, if you're watching us, if you're listening, if you enjoy this podcast, two things you can do: subscribe, give us a 5-star rating. That's one action. Second one, share this with your colleagues, with your friends, with people who you work with, so that they can also listen to the podcast. I do appreciate that. You can find our entire Practitioner Brief on our website at cyberhubpodcast.com. And now let's get right into what's happening today. So this weekend has just been a flurry of cybersecurity activities, a flurry of them. Some of the stuff around Solarwinds. This morning, we woke up with a Google outage that's affecting YouTube, Gmail, and so much more. We have an actual hack on the U.S. Treasury. We've got a new malware that's using Google and Facebook as a launchware. And then we've got the China papers. And all of that is crazy. If we thought we were heading towards a relaxing last few weeks of this year, after all the challenges we've had, if we thought any of this stuff was going to take place, we are very mistaken based on what this weekend has gone on. In fact, it's only increasing what we need to do going forward. So a few things. Let's start talking about really quick the SolarWinds supply chain warning, and it's an alert to everyone. Incident response teams are scrambling as details emerged late Sunday of a sophisticated espionage campaign leveraging a software supply chain attack that allowed criminals to compromise numerous public and private organizations around the world. Among the victims are multiple U.S. government agencies, including the Treasury and Commerce Department, which we'll talk about here momentarily. FireEye is one of the victims. And many more. This again came from a blog post by FireEye and Microsoft yesterday over the weekend, essentially connecting the widespread attack campaign to exploiting the SolarWinds Orion IT monitoring software. The campaign started as early as the spring of this year, folks. FireEye said the attackers, which it tracks as UNC2452, have leveraged Trojanized Orion updates in an effort to deliver backdoor identified by the company as Sunburst. In at least one case, the criminals also delivered a previously unknown memory-only dropper named Teardrop, which in turn attempted to deploy a custom version of a Cobalt Strike Beacon's payload. FireEye said it observed multiple victims, including government, tech, consulting, extractive, and telecom orgs in North America, Europe, Middle East, and Asia. The company has notified the victim. It's made the indicators of compromise available. You can see those on our website. The wide range of victims is not surprising, considering that SolarWinds claims on its website that it has over 300,000 customers worldwide. The software maker says its customers include 425 of the U.S. Fortune 500 firms, the top 10 telecom companies in the U.S., the military, the Pentagon, State Department, NSA, and DOJ. FireEye says the Trojanized update file is a standardized Windows installer patch file that includes compromised, compressed resources associated with the update, including the Trojanized SolarWinds.Orion.Core.BusinessLayer.dll component. A quick search on VirusTotal conducted early Monday revealed that the malicious file was detected as malicious by just 14 of the 69 anti-malware engines. FireEye analysis also found the backdoor uses block list to detect forensics and antivirus tools via processes, services, and drivers. Microsoft has also been tracking these attacks and has released a Windows Defenders update to protect customers from the threat, which it has dubbed as SolarWinds. In the security advisory, SolarWinds said these. In the advisory, I apologize here. In the advisory, SolarWinds said versions 2019.4 HF5 through 2020.2.1 of its Orion softwares are impacted, and it's advising customers to update the version to 2020.2.1 HF1 as soon as possible. The company said another update is expected tomorrow, which will replace the compromised component and provide additional security enhancement. CISA has also issued an emergency directive on this as well. And government organizations have been instructed to create a forensic image and share and system memory and operating systems hosting Orion, analyze networks and traffic for IOCs, disconnect and shut down Orion systems, identify and remove accounts, and persistent mechanisms that may have been set up by the attackers. According to some reports, they're saying Russian state-sponsored threat actors are believed to be behind the Solarwinds attack. Russia has denied this. This came directly from their embassy, and I have a theory here on this, and I'll share it at the end of the podcast. Let's move on to a Google outage affecting YouTube, Gmail, and more. So people woke up this morning to a 503 error on Gmail, Google, YouTube, and so many other stuff. As of 7:40 a.m., Google has said that the Eastern Standard Time, folks, 7:40 Eastern Standard Time, so that's about an hour and a half ago here at the time that I'm recording this, has said that the service has been restored to some. I know that when I tested it this morning, our service was restored. That's why I'm able to deliver this on YouTube as well. And that they are investigating. Some rumors was that this was a DDoS attack on Twitter. Has not been confirmed, so we're just going to lay at rest and wait to see what Google says about this outage that's impacted millions and millions of people across the globe. So Treasury breached, obviously, big news coming out of there. This appears to be related to the Solarwinds vulnerability that we just spoke about. A ton of data has been taken, according to Treasury. National Security Council spokesperson John Elliott said in a statement that the government was taking all necessary steps to identify and remedy any possible issue related to the situation. I know that many friends are on the scene at this point, working around the clock since this was discovered, to help the folks over at Treasury and Commerce get a hand of this stuff. Folks, this is serious, and I'm going to say why this does not seem to be like a Russian PPT, although it may be traced back to a Russian APT. I feel like this is not a Russian attack, and I'll explain just a little bit more with some of my reasoning here in just a moment. First of all, I want to finish our practitioner brief. So mole rats, cyber espionage groups have been using in recent spear phishing campaigns fresh malware that relies on Dropbox, Google Drive, and Facebook for command and control communications and to store stolen data. The criminals have been active since at least 2012 and are considered to be a low-budget division of a larger group called the Gaza Cyber Gang. The mole rats threat actors used in recent operations 2 new backdoors called Sharp Stage and Dropbook, and one previously undocumented malware downloader called MoleNet. Designated for cyber espionage, the malware attempts to avoid detection and takedown efforts by using Dropbox and Facebook services to steal data and receive instructions from the operators. Both backdoors implement Dropbox to extract stolen data. The attack started with an email lowering political figures or government officials in the Middle East, UAE, Egypt, Turkey, or the Palestinian territories. They get them to download malicious documents. One of the lures in the campaign delivers the new malware, which was a PDF file referencing the recent talks between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and His Royal Highness Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi Crown Prince. The document only shows a summary of the content and instructs the recipients to download the password-protective archive stored in Dropbox or Google Drive for full information. People then do that. A technical report from Cyber Reason's Nocturon team notes that the Python-based Dropbook backdoor distinguishes from other tools in MoleRat's arsenal because it receives instructions only through fake accounts on Facebook and Simple Note. Facebook has taken some of these accounts down already. Cyber Reason does have a full detail of this attack on our website. You can go to cyberhubpodcast.com and get it. And now I want to get to what I think is going on here, folks. So let's talk about this for a second. We are in the midst of a cyber battle as practitioners, and this cyber battle is not an easy one. This cyber battle has no boundaries, no restriction. It is death by 1,000 cuts, and I know that's almost a buzzword in our industry. But folks, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I don't care what your anything is. We have to face the reality of this. All of these TTPs, all of these IOCs don't fit Russia completely. They fit one threat actor that's been running a campaign against the US for over 20 years in Western governments and Western nation and Western corporations. That is the Communist Party of China, the CCP. This all plays into the leak by Sky News Australia. If you haven't seen it, folks, the China Papers is a dagger. It is millions of Chinese Communist Party members that have infiltrated organizations, that have infiltrated governments from every single level of the orgs, and are giving this information back to the Chinese Communist Party to give them a leg up and an advantage. We're in the midst of a new Cold War. We all, as cybersecurity practitioners, work in this space. We are all part of this war. We are all part of what is happening to our industry. We all need to come together and start to take down the barriers that hinder our ability to work together to achieve success in prevention, in detection, and in response and recovery to these attacks. We're dealing with an enemy that knows no boundaries. We're dealing with an enemy that will infiltrate us from the inside and outside. We're dealing with an opponent and an adversary that is attacking our way of doing business. It's attacking our wealth. It's attacking our internet, our IP, our intellectual property. But beyond just our trade secrets, it's stealing our human intellectual property. And this is something that we as an industry have to step up. I know that I, as a practitioner, have to find more ways to work with my peers. I have to find more creative ways to share information. We have to be able to get over some of the blocks that have been hindering our ability to cooperate. We have to find ways to trust our federal government officials, people over at CISA, FBI, and NSA, and Secret Service, and work with them more tightly on how we can build a strong, united front in cyberspace. And it's also time for our legislatures and lawmakers to plant a flag on the cybersecurity hill and create some level of deterrence from a U.S. perspective that forces the executive branch or forces the military branch, the defense branch of our government, to take action against countries and organizations that target the U.S. in general. We're seeing a flurry of activity. We're seeing a flurry of data being taken. We know where this data is going, and we're not dealing with the problem head on. The China Papers prove that. The recent activities show that, and we can no longer remain silent. If it's a death by 1,000 cuts, folks, we are bleeding all over the place, and it seems like there's no way to stop the bleeding. But there is a way if we come together. If we don't rely on one doctor or we don't rely on one hospital to do this, we come together as a community. We start to put a stop to this. We start to send out a strong message to our opponents, to our adversaries, that you will not tear us apart, that you will not split us into teams, that we will remain united as one in our efforts to secure not only our organizations, but our nation and our privacy as well. That's it for our practitioner brief here today. A little bit longer than usual, but I felt like we needed to have that conversation. You can subscribe, tune in now. I'll be back with a lot more tomorrow, or maybe even later today, depending on how things pan out. So until then, folks, thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for tuning in. Stay healthy, folks, and stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your podcast list.